Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Directors Agenda Meeting for February 27th, 2018. This is our opportunity to set the agenda for our meeting that's coming up on March 6th. And so we'll be hearing from staff on a variety of the issues that we've got on our agenda. But first, we've got several presentations and people to recognize this afternoon first. So first of all, we have a retirement recognition for Assistant Chief Joseph Gray. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. Again, we're here to celebrate a retirement of Division Chief Joe Gray. Chief Gray has 30 years and 6 months in service to the city. His honors and awards include the JC's Firefighter of the Year, unit citation on E-17 for saving a Little Rock police officer, and serving this community for over 30 years, giving my all every day that I put on the uniform. His favorite memory of working for the city is being promoted to captain and division chief as his mother and family were there to watch his son pin on his badge. Plans for retirement include doing lots and lots of travel and doing lots of parties and events with Joey the friendly fire truck. Some of you all have been seeing Chief Gray's fire truck, and it's a pretty neat little concept. At this time, let me ask Chief Hubbard to come forward and say a few words.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board, along with City Manager Bruce Moore. In my short tenure here as Fire Chief, I really enjoyed working with Chief Gray. He's been nothing but helpful and resourceful for me and the Little Rock Fire Department. And anyone that is born and raised in this community, educated in this community, and then decides to serve this community for over 30 years, I have great admiration for. And so to Chief Gray, from the men and women of Little Rock Fire, we thank you for your service, and we wish you best of luck in your retirement.
Chief, on behalf of 30 years of dedicated service to the city of Little Rock and to the citizens of this city, congratulations and best wishes on your retirement. Congratulations.
Thanks, Bruce. I'd like to say on behalf of myself, the Little Rock Fire Department, it has been a great career, a wonderful journey. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I'd like to send out thanks to Chief Summers for having the vision to put me in this position over 8 years ago. And I think that I made the division a little bit better. And I'm hoping that I'm leaving it in good hands with Chief Salam. And I'd like to thank all the administration and, of course, everybody in the City Board of Directors. And I hope you guys continue to come to the Citizens Fire Academy. I'm sure you will still enjoy it. And thanks, Bruce, for everything you've done as well. Thank you.
Hey, Chief, why don't you recognize your family?
Oh, yeah. And I want to say thanks for my wife for supporting me, and my son, he's over here taking pictures. So, and he's on spring break, and I'm still spending lots of money on Jason. So you guys, whenever you need a party for your kids and grandkids, go to the website, Joey the Friendly Fire Truck, and I'll be happy to do a party for you. Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor. Mayor.
I think I was first. I didn't punch mine?
We're all back.
Give me a copy of this page. Okay, I didn't hear you, Susan. I'm sorry.
Chief, hang on a second. You didn't get to leave yet.
Maybe you treat me
I just want to tell you, I'm actually shocked. I didn't realize you were coming in here to retirement today. You ain't old enough to retire, and you're going to be missed. So it looks like you're going to have the fortunate to be able to retire and spend some time with your son and a lot of time enjoying your retirement. So we appreciate your service to the city, and hate to we'll be missing your face around, but I'm sure we'll see you around town.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Director Wright was next, please.
Thank you. It looks like just yesterday when your mom was passing out cars, telling us how happy she was that you had gotten promoted, and I know she's smiling at this, and I look forward to seeing you all in the future, and I know you're still on Barrow Road, so you're just right down the street from me. When you all located your business there, you know, I was there. So I thank you all for your service, because she was right there with you. And watching your son grow up, and I know you're very proud of him, fine-looking young man. And Chief, enjoy yourself. And if we need a party, we know who to call.
Yeah. Thank you.
Director Hendricks.
I'll be short. I just wanted to say that I've watched Joe grow up from a child. I know the day he was born, he and his mom and I were real good friends. And the wife, I got to know her once he got married. And the son looks just like you, but I tell you, my daughter told me at the reception the other day, Mama, can you tell Joe from his son? I said, yeah. Good luck to both of you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, let me call on Vice Mayor Kathy Webb for some recognition of several of our students from Episcopal Collegiate School who have distinguished themselves athletically on the tennis courts, if not other locations as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the board. And we're going to start with the girls' team. Due to the holidays and to some scheduling conflicts, it's taken us a while to get these teams here, but we're glad to be able to recognize two teams from Ward 3 who captured state championships in tennis. On October 17th of last year at Burns Park, the Episcopal Collegiate Wildcats won the girls 3A tennis team championship, and they did so well that they were guaranteed of winning the tournament even before the semifinals started. And this is their 10th consecutive girls tennis team state championship. They've won every year since 2008. And considering that the school didn't even have an upper school tennis team 20 years ago, this makes the accomplishment even more impressive. If I could go ahead and get the members of the girls team to come up, that would be wonderful. 6 members of the team were named to the 2017 tennis all-state team: Anne Marie DeLuca, Hannah Jackson, Jennifer Chen, Lily Jackson, Lowry West, and Shelby Worsham. The ladies' team is coached by Andrea Barnett. Dr. David Perkinson is the head of school. Troy Urquhart is the head of the upper school. And the director of athletics is Devario Hardy. And so the first plaque we have is for, you want to come over here and we'll do a photo? The first plaque is for the team championship. I will not bite you.
Oh, are we lining up this way?
Yeah, we're kind of getting like this, and we'll do some photos. So the first plaque that we will do is for the team championship. Then we're going to do some individual ones, but before you go back and sit down, we'll want you to introduce yourselves. And if you're a senior, tell us where you're going to go to college. So we'll do a couple of plaques before we do that. And this is from Mayor Mark Studla, the City Board of Directors, City Manager Bruce Moore, congratulating the Episcopal Collegiate School 2017 Girls Tennis 3A State championship. In the quest for the championship, the players and coaches exemplified outstanding sportsmanship, participation, leadership, responsibility, and teamwork. So who gets the team plaque, or as coach?
Yeah, coach is here.
Come on, coach. We should get a picture with you in it, too. I'm going to give somebody this plaque. And then we've got one more plaque. Two members of the team are also individual state champions. Lily Jackson and Shelby Worsham captured the girls' 3A doubles championship, and they have won every single set they played in the state tournament. That is not an easy feat for those of you who know much about tennis. Lily was part of the 2014 and 2015 doubles state championship and won the 2016 singles state championship. Shelby won the 2014 and 15 singles state championship. And between the two of them, they have 11 state championships. They are among the very few players to have won a state championship in both singles and doubles. And I have plaques for, you all have a plaque for Lily?
Yes, ma'am.
You are Lily? Yes. And a plaque for Shelby. And these are similar to the other ones. On behalf of Mayor Mark Stola, the City Board of Directors, City Manager Bruce Moore, we congratulate you on winning the doubles championship.
Thank you.
Y'all introduce yourselves.
I'm Lily Jackson. I'm a senior, and I do not know where I will be attending college next year.
I'm Shelby Worsham. I'm a senior, and I also have no idea where I'm going to go to college.
Hi, I'm Anne-Marie DeLuca, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Hannah Jackson, and I'm a freshman.
I'm Lowry West, and I'm a freshman.
I'm Jennifer Chen, and I'm a freshman.
Just real quick, one thing that was actually left out is after the state tournament, these girls also go participate in the overall tournament if they qualify. And Shelby and Lily qualified for the overall tournament this year and were overall finalists and lost in 3 sets to a team from Bentonville from a 7A school. And just to get to the overall tournament itself is quite an accomplishment, but then to make it to the final and then take a 7A school to 3 sets, I think the 2 sets they lost were the only sets they have ever lost together. And they did a phenomenal job. In fact, they set a school record by being the team to go the farthest at the overall tournament ever at Episcopal Collegiate. So I didn't want that to go unnoticed.
Thank you. We also want to recognize the boys team. They also won the state championship at Burns Park in October of 2017. And at one point during the tournament, there were 8 courts being used in play, and 7 of those 8 courts featured Episcopal Wildcats playing matches. It was very impressive to hear that the girls had won 10 championships in a row. The boys have won 13 in the last 14 years. Also, considering that the school didn't have an upper school team 20 years ago, this makes it an even more impressive accomplishment. 5 members of the boys team were named to the 2017 Tennis All-State team: Harrison James, Jacob Miller, Henry Schock, Sidney Dassinger, and Ethan Strauss. The men are coached by Andrea Barnett. Dr. David Perkinson is the head of school, and Troy Urquhart is the head of the upper school. The director of athletics, again, DeVario Hardy. So if I could get the boys to come on up, we will present a plaque to the team. And just like we did before, if y'all will stay, we also then have some individual plaques, and then we will have you introduce yourselves and tell us where you're going to go to college, if we have any seniors. Okay. Junior Harrison James won the 3A Boys Singles Championship. He won every set he played in the tournament. 7 were by the score of 6-love. That's not an easy thing to do. And this is his 3rd consecutive boys singles state championship. So we would like to give you this plaque on behalf of the mayor, the city board of directors, city manager Bruce Moore. Thank you. Congratulations. And in the finals, the 2 teams were both from Episcopal Collegiate. The doubles team of junior Ethan Strauss and sophomore Sydney Dassinger captured the 3A boys doubles championship. They also won every set they played. This is the 3rd doubles championship for Ethan and the 2nd championship for Sydney. So we have plaques for Ethan. There you go. And Sydney. Also, on behalf of the mayor, the city board, city manager Bruce Moore, will congratulate you. If we could hear from y'all, and then we'll ask your parents to stand up as well.
I'm Ethan Strauss, and I'm a junior.
I'm Sydney Dassinger, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Harrison James. I'm a junior.
I'm Dwayne Shannon. I'm a junior.
I'm Henry Schuck. I'm a senior, and I don't know where I'm going to go to college.
Just real quick again, Harrison and Sydney, well, actually, we had 5 out of the 6 boys qualify for the overall tournament this year. They all did really well. Harrison did exceptionally well and was a semifinalist this year. And did you lose to the guy that won? Yeah, so lost to the eventual champion in the semifinals, so also had a great showing. We appreciate you guys having us here to recognize these kids. They work hard, and their success is their own. They do a wonderful job in the off-season, preparing for each season, and it has been my pleasure and privilege to be able to coach them. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Coach, and I think we perhaps have some parents that are here too. Would you all stand and be recognized, please? Thank you for encouraging your kids to be not only good students, but also athlete scholars as well. Thank you. Good luck to you, and it sounds like with the number of people that are coming back to Episcopal, you're going to be back here in a year. We hope so. Good luck. Okay, you'll notice, board members, moving on to the agenda, we have the addition of the M1 resolution through the M6 resolutions. Is without objection, these are all to set a date for a public hearing, so we'll put those on a consent agenda. And we have the withdrawal of the resolution identified on your agenda as number 7, which had to do with the fence issue at the hotel. It's been withdrawn. We can now move on to the consent agenda items 1 through 6. Director Wright, you're recognized first, please.
Resolution number 3, Mayor, I want to know, is that in Ward 6? Where is that, and why is staff recommending approval?
We can get the details. Again, this is just setting the date, and we'll have those actual in your on your board agenda at the next meeting. But I can get. I think it's Ward 7.
So it's outside of the ward boundaries?
It's outside the city.
Okay.
All right, any other questions on items 1 through 6? Director Adcock.
Mr. Moore, could we have a presentation on M1, please? Or did you want to wait till next week?
Good. Let me ask the Director of Community Programs, Dana Doucette, to come forward.
Would you watch
Mr. Doucette.
Make a phone call.
afternoon, Board of Directors and the Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Bruce and Tom. Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell us what organization this is and kind of what they're going to be doing?
Yes, so this organization that serves as our work readiness training program is Junior Achievement. They've actually been working with us for about 5 years. And what they do primarily, among other things, but their number one thing that they provide for us is the week-long training that we take all of our summer youth employment students through before they actually begin work. So the biggest deliverable, if you will, is that week-long training.
And how much is this bid?
It's up to 75,000. Of course, we haven't finalized the, this is what would allow us to actually finalize the contract with them, so.
And I know the application process has been open. How are the applications going?
For the students, if I remember correctly, we had 1150 earlier today? About 1,100 so far, and we cut it off at 1,200 students, so that quickly, I can say on the very first day, we had more than 400 students that applied on the first day, which was February 1st. And since that time, we've worked up to 1,100, and it will close at 1,200 just because we only have 650 slots.
I was going to ask you, how many slots do you have?
We have 650 slots. Although we are asking the business community, they can sponsor a student for $2,000. That's about what it costs to provide it. If there are any businesses that might want to sponsor a student, that will allow us to go from 650. We're hoping that we would get at least 10 to 20 different businesses that would be willing to step forward to allow us to help more students with their first summer job.
And what number can they call to tell you they want to do that?
They can call the Community Programs Department, which is 501-399-3420, or they can go to our website. If you go to our website, look under Community Programs, you can actually find the worksite application, and there's a checkbox on there to say, yes, I'm willing to sponsor a student this year.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to know, so that maybe we can get some businesses to step up.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Richardson?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Dana, just following up on Director Adcock's question. You said we've been working with them for 5 years. Have we contracted with them for 5 years to do these services?
Yes, we have.
Week-long services?
That's not the only thing they provide, but that's the major thing that they provide. They also do work with our work sites and with the follow-up at our onboarding, where we take the students through for their mock interviews and to sign all of their paperwork. They assist with all of that.
So they assist with actual placement and worksite recruitment? Because
They do assist with it, yes, sir.
So who else providing the other part of the assistance with respect to worksite recruitment? Because that's always been a big challenge, I think, with, we having the funding to subsidize employment, but having the appropriate and adequate work sites to prepare young people to the next level for employment. So who else is doing that besides them?
We actually just hired someone at part-time to work with us through the summer to focus on just that. And then we are also improve the information that we're putting out for the work sites. A lot of the questions that we were getting, we now have a frequently asked questions to help answer some of the initial questions. And we'll be having an orientation for new potential work sites so that they can come and ask any questions that they have.
So worksite recruitment, in addition to partnering with them, we'll do that in-house with someone we just recently hired.
Right.
The training model that they're using, has that been upgraded? Has it been the same one we used the previous 5 years? Or is there some kind of evolution or graduation, given that there are a number of trends in the employment sector that we need to be mindful of? Are we still using the standard curriculum or modality that we used 5 years ago?
No, it's different. One of the things that Junior Achievement does is pre and post testing. So each year they have used that information from past years to improve what they've done in future years. And so we actually do sit down and go through that information. We're using the models of the Youth Master Plan also to make sure that we're targeting some of the information that we're going to need from a Youth Master Plan point of view. And then it also goes in their final report. So they do prepare a final report. Some of the types of things that it includes is it's not just work readiness, it also includes financial literacy information. So we try to give them a well-rounded experience of what training is all about and how to really prepare. It's not just for a job, but it's actually work readiness and career readiness that we're trying to prepare them for.
And I think I heard your answer to Joan, that this will be up to $70,000. So that suggests we're not going above 70,000.
Correct.
It was an RFP or RFQ process.
RFQ process.
And Bruce, is there any particular reason why that organization wasn't listed on a resolution? Was it just an oversight or mistake?
It's listed in the resolution. I'm not sure about the title, but we can correct that. But it is in the resolution.
On the description, I think that's the question that Director Adcock asked about, who is that organization? Looking at what we see, without looking at the actual resolution, the description of, unless I'm missing it, does someone else see it in there? It doesn't show the name of the organization. Mine won't either, for some reason. But that's nothing major, but just if you say it's in there, then it's in there.
The title, we can add that.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Okay, are there any other questions about the items 1 through 6? If not, we've got, go ahead, Director Wright.
Number 4, staff sent two letters out to one of the applicants, but it came to my address. Did y'all get that corrected? Because I know they're waiting to hear from that, for that information. All right, thank you.
Does that address your question, Director Wright? Okay. All right, and then we have a public hearing on ordinance number 8 to deal with the abandonment of an unnamed street right away. And if there's no questions on that, then we can move on to number 9, which is a report on the proposed legislative agenda items for 2019. Emily, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board. In preparation for the 2019 regular session of the Arkansas General Assembly, and also in anticipation of the Municipal League's process for adopting items for its legislative package, staff has identified a few legislative changes that we would like to pursue in January if there are no objections from the board. So I'd like to present them now and then take any questions you have. So first and foremost, we will be continuing to support efforts regarding the online sales tax legislation that remains a priority. As you know, there were a couple of bills in the 2017 session to address this, and neither became law. But since then, the U.S. Supreme Court has agreed to take up South Dakota versus Wayfair, which is an internet taxation case. So staff will be watching that and working with the Municipal League as that decision is handed down. The second item is something that the Finance and IT departments brought forward. Amendment 78 to the Arkansas Constitution allows municipalities to incur short-term financing obligations for tangible personal property, but with changes in technology, staff is finding that we can't use Amendment 78 financing options for certain types of things. So defining tangible personal property in the enabling legislation to accommodate purchases pertaining to electronic data and data storage would be helpful. The best example of this issue is that before, when we bought software, you got a disk. And now the same software uses cloud-based or internet-based technology. So this will be a change to kind of bring us up with the times. And the third item is in regards to criminal cases. Criminal cases hinge on witnesses coming forward and testifying, so enhancing state anti-intimidation laws would help protect the process. So this would include amending state statutes dealing with witness bribery, tampering, and intimidating a juror, witness, or informant. So those are the items that staff has identified, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Director Hines, you recognize, please.
So on the intimidation statute, what exactly are we proposing enhancements to?
At this point, we don't have specific bill drafts.
We're working with John Hout, who's
Are you
a
working with, okay,
former
if you're
deputy
working,
prosecutor that worked for me, and
if you're working, I've
on-
had the conversation with John, so if that's who we're working with, I know exactly where we're rolling, and I would like to come down and speak at any committee meetings if so warranted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
the process, we're obviously well in advance of the process, but that's because if the municipality is going to adopt these as part of their package, they need to have it in time for their meeting in June. So that's why we're moving forward. It doesn't mean that there may not be other pieces of legislation that as a city we may want to advocate for. So we'll keep that in mind if other people come up with issues that they think are relevant that we need to take a position on or to advance to the legislature. We'll certainly do that. Mr. Moore, did you have a comment? Go ahead, Director Wright.
I was just going to ask the manager and you, Mayor, are we looking at anything to do with our Housing and Neighborhood Programs Department to make it a little easier on what we're trying to do and clean up these neighborhoods with these landlords? I know we've gotten, punched down a couple of times, but it's still an issue. Took some pictures on the way here of stuff that's been dumped on the side of a neighborhood street. And we just need something.
Well, I think that's something that can be handled through ordinances, but certainly we can look at the state statutory scheme and see whether there's other relief that could be provided. But I mean, the issues of notice, Tom, is that set by state statute in terms of the notice provisions?
There's a statutory
So we might be able to
provision.
abbreviate those or try to get those abbreviated.
Yes.
And I would remind the board that one of our goals, one of our bills a few years ago was to say on January 1st, we're going to issue an annual notice to say you must comply with city code. And that would allow us, our thought was that would allow us to go to straight to citation. And that absolutely went nowhere out at the Capitol. So we've tried, and I hope that, I know Tom has been working as Director Hendricks and Director Adcock and others request to see what we can do. But those notice provisions are just a high bar, and we're a very strong property rights state, and makes it very, very difficult.
Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
To piggyback on what Mr. Moore has said, I think that in Ward 1, I know we do have legislators that are running. I was at each one of those events where we did talk with the legislator, or he was not from this area. I didn't see any push from legislators in Little Rock doing nothing. And I remind people this is an election year. We need to kick them out. That's all.
Director Adcock, you're recognized, please.
Mr. Moore, we learned as children, try again, and someday you will succeed. I think you have directors up here that wants us to keep on trying. We're never going to get there if we don't try every time we have an opportunity. So I would like to ask us to try again, and then also to, as Director Hendricks said, contact our legislatures and take them for a ride in our community, or send them the pictures that we send to Mr. Honeywell and Mr. Turner. I think if we make enough noise and try real hard, that we might come up with something that can really help us in our communities.
On the first item on the internet sales tax, and this is very tentative, we hadn't gotten confirmation, but there's been a lot of interest, in Representative Hill expressed interest in meeting with us. So tentatively, we are looking at the Tuesday of March the 27th. That's an agenda meeting. We would have the agenda meeting here and then go across the street to Metroplan and sit around the table and have the visit. So that's what we tentatively have set up, and we're waiting to confirmation, but I wanted to get that on everybody's radar screen since that's been something we've talked about.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Anyone else? Thank you, Emily. All right, you'll see then we have boards and commission appointments, and that concludes the agenda. So if there's no other business, so there's all sorts of calls here. Director Campuris.
Go ahead. Tom, would you bring us up to date on your court day today?
Well, is fact of how well I did, I'm glad that Arkansas now recognizes open carry because I need protection. Judge Fox set a hearing and held it today. He ended up granting motions to dismiss on the declaratory judgment action as to the enforceability through the State Ethics Commission of the city's ordinance that limits the time on campaign funds. He rejected the claims for First Amendment violations and for injunctive relief that were filed by the candidates. He denied intervention by a group of individuals who wished to intervene to raise a First Amendment issue. He ruled that under the definition of a candidate, which is someone who takes an affirmative step towards running for office, including but not limited to soliciting donations, that neither Mr. Scott nor Mr. Saban are candidates. He ruled that the city did not have standing to challenge the regulations of the Ethics Commission in terms of exceeding the scope of their administrative authority or in terms of the violation of the Equal Protection Clause. Set it up for an immediate appeal if we wish to take it, and everything's with prejudice, and it's an election issue that can be expedited in his mind.
What were the
Tommy also ruled that on its face, he felt the ordinance was permissible.
Right, he said that on its face, the city's ordinance is constitutional.
So if we appealed, where do we appeal?
To the Arkansas Supreme Court.
Well, you know, I think it's a travesty that we're to the point where we're trying to do good government and people won't let us. I mean, I really honestly think that it is a travesty that people are circumventing what we've tried to do. I think this has become a political football that in all likelihood will never be decided before a time that makes any difference. I think there are more things that we ought to be doing and Tom ought to be doing. And my suggestion to the board is that we have a resolution that suspends our ordinance until January, and then we can reconsider how to take care of it in the non-political season. I know that will not be popular. I don't think it, but I think that the reality of life is that it is the discussion that we need to get away from. And there are 6 board members that are vulnerable because of this, and my inclination, Tom, if this is not true, is that we're still bound by what we say. Isn't that right? So I think that it just puts 6 people in the wrong position, and I still think it is the right thing to do, and I strongly condemn the language from all the other people that we're doing the wrong thing. But the political reality is that by the time this gets appealed, it's going to be past the time where it's going to make any difference, and we might as well just accept it, suspend this, in my mind, suspend it until we can work through it in a non-political season. So,
well, if I could respond, first of all, I've asked Tom he's going to issue a more complete memorandum to us. I think it's a little early to try and come to all these conclusions so quickly, and I think that may very well be an option to consider. I know that at this point in time, the only person it really affects is me. And I understand that there are other people running. I know there are some people who are candidates who've said they are respecting the city ordinance, notwithstanding what other candidates may be doing in the mayor's race. So I want you to know that I agree with Director Campuris that the integrity and the validity of that ordinance has been very, very important. And so I do think that notwithstanding the political nature of it, there's some real merit in trying to find out whether or not it's a valid ordinance. So I don't know what other people think, but I want people to know that I'm going to abide by our June ordinance because I think that's the right thing to do.
And I agree with you,
And
Mayor.
so I can't speak for the rest of the people running, but I do know that there are people who've announced that they're running against certain board members, and they have, at least I've been told, that they are honoring the June deadline. So I just wanted people to know that this is something that I believe I can adequately fund whatever I need to do in terms of a campaign by honoring the ordinance that we have, and certainly think that, starting on whatever the day after the election is, what is it, June 7th? I believe it is, but that the other people on this board that are not running now would be able to start raising funds. So, I mean, it's a cycle like that I think, I'm not sure you ever avoid
Well,
by
and I'm
suspending
not trying to
something.
avoid it. I'm just trying to say there's a political reality of what's going on right now, and that I don't think we suspend it indefinitely. I think we suspend it till the day after the election.
November
And-
6th.
Pardon me?
Date the mayor was looking for was November 6th. That's the day of the election.
Well, I just think that's something we ought to consider doing, and I would rather Tom be spending his time doing the amicus brief on the tax relief and that sort of thing than doing these other things. There are only so many things we can do. And that it is amazing to me that there are so many courts, judges, and politicians that are tone deaf to trying to do good government, that it is being, the perception is that we're doing something wrong. And I think that when this came up, it was good government. It's the good policy. It's the right thing to do. But we're now March 1st, basically. And by the time this thing gets rolling and Tom spends all his time doing it, we're going to be at that time. And I think what the mayor said is honorable, and he will stick to it. But I think that we need to spend our efforts on housing and education and violence and things like that. And we're getting bogged down in an issue that we're not going to, the practical matter is it's not going to make any difference. And I'm getting a little tired of the other people saying how bad this board is and trying to do good government. And that's just, I don't think we throw it away. I just think we just put it away till we can start doing something constructive about it.
Director Hendrick, we're not in a meeting, so.
My
Director
comment-
Hendricks.
Okay, thank you. I don't know what he's want. I'm opposed to what he's saying, and what I wanted to do was to ask Tom. At this time, it seems that the mayor was defending his issue, and I think that's political. Now, frown up all you want to.
No, I was defending
I'm
the
not
ordinance.
afraid to say nothing. Tom, would you respond? What I'm asking you, what I really want the general public to know is that the court did rule. I brought it with me, I've read it, and I think if you could just go a little bit in depth to let the public know what the courts have said. So if anybody's got, yeah, he said it too, but I put it at the level that the average person would understand. It could be just 2 or 3 words, but it's coming from you as an attorney for the city of Little Rock.
Director Hendricks, the court said our ordinance is valid, that a violation is not considered by the Ethics Commission, and that as far as this matter is concerned, there's no reason to look for enforcement of this election law at the Ethics Commission, which is the entity given direction to enforce election law.
Thank you, Tom.
That was about 10 words. Does that count?
That's enough.
Director Adcock.
Yes, I agree and disagree with you, Mayor. I disagree with you saying this is about your race mainly.
No,
but-
I only said I wanted people to know it was not just about the mayor's office.
No, it's not, because last night I sit through a neighborhood meeting, and about 1 hour of it was nothing but people running, and one of the candidates was in your position. What I wish that these candidates would do is before they go out here and start campaigning, that they would understand how city government works and how the mayor and the city manager works together and everything. Because when I sit and listen to them, I feel like that they do not know one thing that we do up here. And I think before they're out there campaigning, that they need to at least spend time coming to board meetings and everything. I think that I've already starting to see some people calling board members that are running and saying, you know, you running, can I help with your campaign and everything? And this is exactly why years ago, when Dean and I and BJ sat on this board, that we wanted to take the board out of this type of political stuff. And it's already started, and right now it's a very disadvantage to the 6 people on this board who are running in the wards, as well as a disadvantage to you. But I think that, like Dean says, maybe we put up our toys until another day, because right now it doesn't seem like that anyone really understands why we're doing this. They're trying to make it political to you and there's 6 people who are running, and it's not political that. It is about what we do up here on the board, being fair to all citizens and listening to everyone. And it's gotten to that when you have this far ahead of time, and when they're out there campaigning, and our 6 representatives do not feel like they can campaign, because as you said, we have all agreed to nothing until June the 1st. And it's hard for them, and it's not fair to them to have that disadvantage over people who are running against them, particularly when you have to sit there and listen to them talk about why you shouldn't be there, and you can't even get up and defend yourself because you have voted to go by what the board says. So I agree with Dean. We need to give the 6 people running on this board, plus you, Mayor, a fair chance out here at your positions. Thank you.
Director Hines.
So Tom, just getting some time frames, since it would be recognized as a campaign issue, if we appeal to the Supreme Court, what's the timeline for briefs and stuff? Is it 30 days, or assuming that the Supreme Court sets a date for it?
Director Hines, the ultimate decision as to whether it's an election issue will be made by the Supreme Court. The fact that Judge Fox said that it was an election issue certainly helps. Before the end of the week, we hope to have the formal judgment entered. If that's the case, technically we get 30 days to appeal from the date that that judgment is entered. Whether to do that is going to be decided by this board. It's not something decided by me. We can ask it to be an expedited appeal. There's not a large record in this case. There's the pleadings. There were some dialogue for about an hour or so this morning, and then the judge's ruling, which took probably 10 to 20 minutes later in the morning. So I think a record could be completed pretty quickly. I don't know what type of briefing schedule the court would take. I don't know how quickly the court would get to it. As I was speaking earlier with the mayor, I kind of came up with some numbers, and he immediately said, no, I think it'd be quicker. And I immediately said, let me do a memorandum that sets these things out, because, you know, I mean, we got the ruling this morning. I sent the alert to y'all as quickly as I could to give you the outline of what it was, but the ramifications and where do we go from here is what I'd like to set out in the memorandum.
Okay. And then, yeah, if you can just give us best case, worst case scenario timeline, because I think I probably share Dean's concerns that we're going to be pushing up on that June 1st deadline anyway. So I don't know what the repercussions would be if we pursued it. On to the other thing he was suggesting, if we can we suspend that ordinance, or do we have to repeal it legally? What do we have to do? Can we legally suspend it until a certain date, or do we have to fully repeal it in order to do it? And if you want to,
let me leave that for the memorandum.
For the memorandum, that's fine.
Because there's ramifications with whichever action is taken, if that's what the board wishes to do. And I will say this: if we repeal the ordinance, then that moots any appeal, because the appeal would be over the impact of our ordinance. So I need to think through that.
And I could, I think it's interesting that he said our ordinance is legal on one hand, but he said it's also not related to campaign election law. It kind of an interesting judgment, but I'll leave you legal Eagles to debate the judgment.
And to be sure, what he said is that it is legal, but the Election Commission, which is given the authority to deal with election issues, does not have jurisdiction to deal with it.
Because it's a city ordinance? Is that?
He didn't really go
He
into
didn't,
explanation.
okay, I just was curious as to what the reason was.
And Tom, you might just follow through with, that was the essence of the lawsuit.
That's what I said to him when he said, but Mr. Carpenter, what about? And I said, that's why
I
we
mean,
filed the lawsuit.
the allowance of having a more permissible or a more limited time for fundraising is in the statutory scheme of the Ethics Commission's authority. I mean, it's not like it's stuck out there in some other section of the code. It's part of the exact same code that they're dealing with, so.
And he didn't opine on the equal protection, the fact that the Ethics Commission said that candidates can't form exploratory committees, that they set us apart from.
Incumbents.
Incumbents can't be.
He said that the city didn't have standing to raise that issue, which of course, after Citizens United, doesn't make sense because the U.S. Supreme Court has made it quite clear that a corporation is a person, and we are a corporation. So I'm not quite sure where that came from.
Okay, good deal. Thank you, Tom.
Director Wyrick.
Thank you, Mayor. Tom, I look forward to your next memorandum to describe all the details to us. But I'm over 65, and and I recall that when we put this ordinance into place, there was a lot of citizens that came before us and talked to us about doing this because they thought it was good government to do that. And the reason they did is because that doesn't put us in a position to think about our contributions when we're in session. And as you know, we're in session every other Tuesday night. So that was the reason that I recall that we did this. Can anybody elaborate on that any more than that? It was a citizens' initiative that we did this.
It's a heck of a deal. I would have said something else of a deal, but the three of us were the only three that were here at that time. But it was basically, we all agreed, the citizens agreed and the board agreed that it was not like they said, you have to do this.
No.
We all said, we function better if we're not in a situation where the person you're asking to help you with an election a year and a half from now is the person asking to do something in front of you tonight.
And we all felt like it was good government to
We
do
thought,
it that way.
we thought it was, and we were actually applauded that it was good government by the business community and by everybody else. I mean, everybody, the funny thing about this is, if you remember, and Tom and Bruce were here too, the business community also said it was not the people you would normally think that were saying this. It was the business community that said it takes the pressure off us.
Right. It was a fair deal for everybody.
They said, this is the greatest thing we've ever had because you don't have to worry about anything. We all work together for, almost 2 years together, or 4 3/4 years together before anybody comes and says anything to me. And I see your track record, and then I can make a decision on what I want to do. I'm not asking the day that I get reelected to start raising money. And that's the travesty of this. You've got two people out there that are making us look like we're the good old boys club up here. And all we've tried to do is say, we're trying to be fair and honest about how we take care of government in this city. And that's the real travesty. And my feeling is that Tom's timeline's going to bring us precariously close to June 1st. It may be May 1st, but it's going to be a fairly moot point, and it just becomes an issue that shouldn't be an issue, and it hurts five other people, and I don't think we need to get rid of it. I'm not for whatever we need to be able to do. if you repeal it, then the first meeting in November, we need to have it back on the agenda to vote on. I mean, it's something that we need to say is part of our DNA. It's our fiber. It's how we're going to govern. It's how we're going to do things. But we don't need to let.
But you see, we
I'll
are.
really get in trouble. I mean, there are all these smart lawyers who are up here saying what terrible things we're doing. It's crazy. Freedom of speech? How are we blocking someone's freedom of speech?
So the reason I brought that up is because if this was an initiative that was agreed upon, it came from the citizens, we agreed upon it, we had a lot of public dialogue about it, I would be willing to have a public hearing here to listen to the citizens and see what their thoughts were, again, to see if that's changed. Maybe it's different now. I don't think it is, but it might be well served for all of us if we had a public hearing to talk about the campaign finance.
And that's the reason I wanted to bring something up, so we could have a set time where people could come and talk about it.
Okay, so you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
don't agree. I mean, yeah.
So how do we do that? Can we
Well,
set it up for like next week or 2
I
weeks?
would say we have a resolution or whatever we have to say that, and then we just tell people to come talk about it, and then we listen to what they say and vote on it. I mean, it's.
Our rules say we can't have it by next Tuesday, but we could have it in 2
Well,
weeks.
next Tuesday is the 6th, right?
Yeah.
Then we don't meet again
We don't. We meet March 20th.
Right.
Well, then we could have it in 2 weeks and have a special.
We could have a,
Nobody's gonna be here. That's why we're not meeting on the 13th, remember?
but we could have a hearing on March 20th.
Right.
Yeah. I would like to see us do that.
That's fine.
So can we come forward with a resolution or
Well-
something to get it on our agenda for the 20th?
We could just set it for a public hearing.
Okay.
Well, we need to have something we can vote on, not a public, we need to have, I think we need to have something we can vote on. And basically that is the public hearing, is the public discussion on it.
Okay.
And are you, just so for clarity, are you suggesting that it'd be a resolution to suspend the ordinance? Is that what you want Tom to?
My idea is that on the 20th, if that's when it's going to be, that we have something as time, whatever we need to do to make it where we're not worried about it between now and the second week in November. And that in the second week in November, we either reconsider it or that it comes back into effect. And Tom will have to figure that out.
And by that time, we'd have your memo
Yeah.
being brought forward. Okay. Okay. I'd like to make a motion
There
that
may
we
be,
have a
well,
public
we're not
hearing
in
on the
session,
20th.
so we'll go ahead administratively and set a public hearing for that.
For the
Director.
20th, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
You know, there may be, I know, just so we're fair to everybody, I know Dean has suggested what his suggestion is. If there are other suggestions that other board members have on resolutions, certainly that can be considered as well. I just want to make sure there's, everybody's got an opportunity to figure out what they think is the best way to approach this. Okay, let me back up. Director Hendricks is next, please.
I love to keep Tom on the spot. Tom, and I watch your facial expression of all of you, not just you, Tom. Do you agree or disagree with what Dean is talking about at this moment? No.
Director Hendricks.
Don't be scared of these people.
The last I heard was you want the memorandum, you want a resolution for the 20th, and you will put on the agenda for the 20th
not
the
me.
discussion of the resolution. I think that's fine. I don't think that the order is going to be signed before Friday. That would be March the 2nd, and for those who know and care, Texas Independence Day. And that means that the date to file the notice of appeal would be April the 1st. April Fool's
Hold
Day.
your point. If you're doing all of that, earlier you said that the mayor was not in this, okay? But now I'm
Did I
beginning.
say that? I don't think I said that.
It wasn't about him.
Right.
Yes, but then he kept talking. So I'm going to add something. If you all are doing that, when you finish with that, I'm dissatisfied with at-large people sitting on this board because everything that I brought before this board, at-large people voted against it. Okay? So when you finish with them, when I come to the next meeting, I'm going to give you something to see if you can do for me as a minority on this board. Thank you.
Director Hines.
So Tom, one thing as we're just going on the round robin, we actually don't have, from a date standpoint, once June 1st hits, we'll all have the ability to raise funds. So maybe our suspension only needs to go through June 1st. Correct? We don't have to suspend the ordinance all the way through November because once June 1st hits, we're all able to raise money.
Right.
So so just on that standpoint. On the flip side, just to throw another log on the fire, if we were to hypothetically change our, not do away with our ordinance, but change our ordinance and add exploratory committees to our ordinance, we can't do it after, it's post facto, right after the fact. So any campaign funds that the exploratory committees had raised to that point would have been legal. But if we changed our ordinance and said it covers exploratory committees from here on out on the 20th, they wouldn't be able to raise money from then till June 1st, correct?
Director Hines, there's really no answer to that question. If you amend your ordinance and the lawsuit that's been filed becomes moot.
Okay, so it has to, everything has to stay as it is.
Well, if you're going to appeal.
If we're going to appeal.
We're going to appeal.
Not going to appeal.
But if we decide not to appeal it, could we change our ordinance and add exploratory committees to it? And would it be effective against those folks from raising money from that point forward with an emergency clause?
You can add it. The problem that I've got is this, and that I'll address more fully in the memorandum. When we got to a discussion of 76224, which is a statute that gives local governments and counties the authority to set more restrictive dates, the judge made a comment that there were only two definitions under the election code that applied: the definition of candidate and the definition of exploratory committee. And I said, no, there are three, because the definition of contribution says the direct or indirect provision of something of value to a person, committee, candidate. When the judge said, or by leaving that provision out as being a relevant statutory provision, then the linchpin of us being able to say that donations to an exploratory committee violates our ordinance was gone. And that's a big issue for appeal, if we appeal. But he's basically went on and said that there is nothing in the statute and the definition of exploratory committee or in the statute about timeframes that says anything about exploratory committees. So from that standpoint, I mean, we amend the statute. What he has ruled so far doesn't matter, but where we are is he's already kind of told us, you know, y'all don't have any control over exploratory committees. So that amendment wouldn't, in my mind.
And the
cure it.
exploratory committee issue only came to light on that new state statute, correct?
It came after.
It came after
initiated
our initiated
Right,
act,
right.
right? Okay, all right. I'll let you roll it up to us. I just wanted to ask the question. Thank you.
Director Adcock.
I would like to wait for any votes or any decision on this after we see Tom's memorandum, because I think that we may find some other options that he might present to us. So, that's it.
Well, let me, that's fine, and let me just add that since everybody's been very vocal tonight on this issue, certainly between now and once we get the opinion from Tom and all the options on Friday, people can continue to make suggestions.
Or early next week.
What now?
Or early next week. I said that I would try to get it out Friday, but I said or early next week.
Does that mean before Tuesday?
It would have to mean before Tuesday, yes.
Okay. All right, very good. Is there anything else to come before us? If not, please recognize we've got a special recognition of our National Merit Scholarships and Achievement Scholars and Hispanic recognition coming up on the 6th of March, as we typically do. And Director Campiris has something, perhaps.
Just to get y'all's collective wisdom, on Thursday night at 6, there's a meeting to talk about the grocery store on 12th Street. And I'm not 100% sure. Unfortunately, I've got a meeting that night, so I'm not going to be able to attend, but I'm not 100% sure in our form of government what is the best way of approaching problems like this. And I think that it is always good to let everybody have the opportunities, like BJ said, to have voice their opinion. But once that happens, how do we as a city government move forward on these issues? And, you know, I read the mayor's Monday communique about finding a grocery store. I'd love to do that. If you can pull that rabbit out, I've got some other places that would like one too.
Well,
but I'm not being facetious. I think we need to hear from people. We need to take their suggestions. We need to hear their thoughts, all those sorts of things. But I don't know, after you do that with our form of government, how do we move ahead? Does this then go to Bruce and to housing and to go to different areas? Does this, go to you and Bruce to sit down and bring back formulas for us to consider? What do we do from here to try to after we hear these issues, to move forward with them? And I'd like to get your thoughts so that when these things come up and people have a big issue, how do we as a government respond to that? And how do we as collectively as government respond to that? Now, not how do each one of us try to figure out what to do on an issue. And that's...
Let me mention a couple of things. First of all, when I first learned about it, I immediately made contact with many of the real estate brokers in the community to explore the opportunity of trying to find an alternative grocery store that might go in there. I have been told, and we're still trying to tie this down, that the building is for sale. I was told it was fairly reasonable, but I'm not able to get that comfort. I mean, I've got to call into one of those realtors right now who's hopefully found that information out on whether or not there is an entity that is interested in acquiring the building to continue a grocery store. In the event that that is not possible, either because the owners won't sell it or they can't come to an agreement, there's an alternative to explore whether or not that entity might be willing to go into and would like to consider perhaps going into the 8,000 square feet that we have in the 12th Street station. And so Bruce and I have talked about that issue in terms of the fact that it needs tenant finish out, and how would that be handled relative to some rent abatement or rent reduction as it relates to that facility. And we're trying to get some information about that in terms of whether that might be a viable option. So independent of that, you're exactly right, and I'm not sure it's the form of government necessarily that's an impediment. It's that the private sector.
It's not I don't mean impediment.
The private sector, the private, trying to convince the private sector that they need to put a grocery store in this location has been the challenge. In fact, not even with the city market there have been several desires for a better grocery store in this location in the past. And I have made requests of Walmart in terms of their type of a location that they have, the smaller size that they had, along with others to try and put in a grocery store. And they're not receptive to doing that at this point in time. I don't know how you could cajole or force somebody to try and do that when it's purely a private sector investment of many millions of dollars.
Mark, I know, all I'm saying, I agree with all that.
Just
All
letting you
I'm
know what we've done.
Just, I think have progress reports and say, we're listening to people, and these are the people that Bruce has assigned, or I've assigned, and I'm working with Bruce with these three entities, and I'll bring back suggestions to you. I find it really hard to listen to people saying, I need something done. People have come to the office and say, I've got stomach pain, and I say, I acknowledge you've got stomach pain, and they walk out, and I don't say what I'm going to do or what I'm going to look at to do it. That's not the way you deal. You have to listen to what people say and then say, it may not work. The first test I do, or the second test, or the fifth test may be the one that I find something. But all I want to know is who's going to be doing the test, who's looking around, who's trying to look, how do we do with Bruce's people and you on addressing issues? And there has to be more than going to a meeting and hearing good ideas. Someone then has to take the ideas, sensitize the ideas, try and test them, and then bring back periodic reports to us. I mean, we'll run ourselves crazy if every time something comes, we all go to a meeting, listen for 2 hours, and then everybody walks out and says, I hope someone does something. I mean, and that's all I'm asking is, how do we organize ourselves to?
You said that you would not be attending, so I want to say that.
Well, that's got to do with anything.
I know, you're just going on and on.
Well, again, I just wanted to give an update on what some of the dialogue and discussion has been so far. So certainly there may be other suggestions out there, and we'll take them. And once we hear them, we'll report back to the board anything that we think can be moved forward. Director Hendricks.
I agree with Dean with what he's saying. I won't be attending the meeting either. For what? People know, if you didn't know, the building was in bad shape. It had been a fight or whatever the person is operating. But it's a political year, and I'm going to say it as long as I'm sitting here, stop campaigning on somebody else's time. Okay? I'm talking to you, me, and anybody else, and myself. No, I'm not coming. People need to know the truth about that building. When I have been driving by there for the past 2 years, you don't see over 3 cars at that store. I have been in that store. That's where you need to start. So start from the bottom and go up and that's what I got to say, Mayor. Let's stop politicking. And like I told several of the people that had the audacity to email me to know what was I doing, if you only knew what I said to them.
Director Wright, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if I knew about the meeting, but I'm not sure I will be attending it. No, I don't think I know even when it is. But would this not be an opportunity when the door closes, that's when you get your ingenuity out. We have all these young, smart, bright minds. We got all these venture centers and all that kind of stuff. And maybe it's time to think outside the box, because if the traditional market is not interested in locating there, maybe this is a time for an untraditional approach to that situation. I don't know. All I know is I agree with what Director Hendricks has said. I've passed by there too, and there are very few cars, and I have actually been in that store, and some of the impressions that I got were not very favorable. So, and I know some of the people that I've heard from, I'd be surprised if they even shop there, because I see a lot of them at the city market over on 36 and Colonel Glenn. So I'm just saying, maybe this is a time for some ingenuity. What do these young people have to say? This is a corridor that we're revitalizing. People are, like she said, the building is in disrepair. So maybe this is just time for some ingenuity.
Director Hendricks again, please.
You want me to say something?
You had your light on, Director Hendricks. I'm recognizing you.
I turned it off.
Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Director Hendricks. Mayor, and I guess just to dovetail our previous points about this being a political season, as Director Wright mentioned, this has been part of a revitalization effort that started well over 10 years ago. And one of the things that we recognized during the revitalization, Mayor, of that area, that area, not only is it a financial desert, it's a food desert. That was acknowledged long before this store proposed to close. Secondly, Mayor, the point about utilizing the 8,000 square feet and a 12th Street station to replace the operation there is not adequate at all. And the reason why we don't have any tenants there right now has nothing to do with desire and or perception of public safety. It's another issue that Bruce and staff and I have to work with respect to property acquisition for parking for the police department that makes it us to have parking availability for any potential tenant. Now, to the point that Director Wright and Director Hendricks made, that it's obvious to anyone who lives in that area, who frequents that store, there are people who live right next door to that store who have access to transportation but will not frequent that store. They would shop at City Market on Main Street. They would go to Kroger's on Colonel Glenn. And man, when we first started this revitalization project, one thing I do know, you and I had gone in that store and met with store owners, or not the building owners, but store owners, and looked at the adequate repairs that need to be made to make that an adequate place for people to frequent and shop. So at the risk of not getting political, there have been several attempts made in that area to revitalize just not that area, Director Wright, but that store and other facilities in that area, other strip malls and other buildings. And I think this is just unfortunate, Dean, limitation on what we can do with respect to private sector businesses. I don't know how we can force someone to stay in the area and not make money in the area that they're operating in. I don't know how you can force someone to run a store that they're losing money on. So, I mean, I think that you and Bruce and I, we've all had this conversation with respect, Dean, to about the authority and the limitations and or the bully pulpit of the mayor's office or the manager's office to intervene in these private negotiations. So I just think that's an unfortunate reality of where we are right now. And that is in Ward 2, Mayor.
Yes, it is. Director Adcock.
Yes. I would like for Director Webb to tell us the positive things that are going on now in that area with the bus.
Director Webb, Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you, Director Adcock. I mean, this is by no means a substitute, but in response to requests from the neighborhood, and I've been invited to some of these meetings, not really in my capacity as the city director, but with the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance, because we've worked on this food desert issue for many years. And so we worked with the city, and I want to thank Bruce and James and with Fresh to You at Mosaic Church to make sure that we were out there yesterday. Director Richardson came to the market, and, you know, it always makes me really sad to be in an area where there's a food desert and see the people who don't have access to high-quality fresh fruits and vegetables. And we sold out of food yesterday morning before noon, and the person who runs Fresh to You had to go back and get more food. And then by the time we closed, we almost sold out. And what she did was she asked all the people who shopped, what do we not have that you want? What do you want us to have next time? What would be a different time? What would be a better time? And so we're meeting again on Friday to make the plans for next Monday and to see if we'll be able to come back more than once. And we did cooking demonstrations, and we provided recipes and samples for people. And because of and I want to say that this was funded by the mobile market, this was funded by Vine and Village at Mosaic yesterday. If you spent $5, they gave you $10 worth of produce, and the prices were already low. And we're working on being able to take SNAP within the next few weeks. So we'll be back out there on Monday with the fresh produce, back out there with cooking demonstrations and recipes on Monday.
I hope y'all would consider talking to some of our bread companies here in Little Rock, as well as some of the dairies, and see if maybe they could send a truck out there to sit on the same parking lot and sell their bread and things. And, some of us might even want to volunteer to come and sell the bread and the milk. But I'm glad that you was able to leave a positive note on it. Thank you.
Well, and I'll say, thank you to Chelsea for letting people know about it, because we actually had some people who drove over from Jacksonville just because they wanted to see what was going on, and it's actually generated interest from some folks about trying to do additional mobile markets. Thank you.
Yeah, and, the mobile market is really a great effort by the city to get into the food deserts, and that was one of the reasons why we started it. Found out about it a few years ago in Memphis, and obviously still good ideas. I want to really compliment our fleet services staff, because we got a bus from Rock Region Metro, one of their surplus buses. It broke down a while back, and our city staff had to basically rebuild the entire guts of that bus in order to get it back running again. But that's the kind of commitment that I think the city is making to try and fill the gap when we have these kinds of gaps. So, thank you. Director Wright.
Mayor, or three things, actually. I did not know about that. When I got home, I saw the press release, so it was already after 1 o'clock, go to church, and things were long. Potholes. Mr. Moore, I wanted to say thank you so much for your prompt reaction to the many potholes. I was out riding around Saturday, and I'm like, my goodness, what in the world happened? There was no place you could drive where there wasn't a pothole. And then immediately when I looked at my emails, you had already begun to address that. So I really want to say thank you, and I sent it out to several of my neighborhood associations, and they're very appreciative too of our fast response to that. Street sweeping schedule. Is there a street sweeping schedule? I had a constituent to call me and ask me about that, and she said she'd called numerous times, and she has not been able to get any clarity as to when the street sweeper is scheduled, and how can we find out?
Hey, let me ask Mr. Honeywell to come forward and address that.
Y'all can tell that somebody been calling down there. Well, they called me, so I don't know. I don't know last time I saw it.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Director Wright, there is no set schedule of a day and an exact place of where a street sweeper will be. Like if they gave us an address, we couldn't say we're going to be at your home next Tuesday at 3 o'clock. The city operates on a rotating, we start at one end of the city, we sweep through the city. It takes as long as it takes to get through the entire city, then we go back and start over. And we have multiple trucks working in different areas during that time. So the first time we make a pass through the city, if there's not as much debris, trash, leaves, other things that we're sweeping up off the street, it might take us a month to get across the city. The next time we do it, if there's more debris, so we have to go back and dump the sweepers more often, and we don't get as far each day, it might take us a month and a half to do that same distance with the street sweeper. So that's why we can't tell you an exact day of when we're going to be somewhere, because we don't know how far we're going to get each day based on the quantity of debris that's out there.
Okay.
On average, we get anywhere from 6 to 9 passes across the entire city every year.
Why do we do it that way? You said there are multiple trucks.
Yes, ma'am.
And if you have multiple trucks, that means you can have a schedule. I'm just asking you the questions
no.
that were put to me. And I was surprised that there was no schedule. I know I don't see the street sweeper. And that's a tongue twister for me. I apologize. But I'm just saying, why do we do it that way?
Once again, because of the unpredictability of how far you can sweep on a daily basis makes it impossible to have a set schedule.
Mr. Moore, how do other cities handle street sweeping? Got it.
We can look at that. I know it's frustrating when, and Director Hendricks has called often about, okay, what's the schedule Because there's two things. You got that, but then you also have your main arterials. So explain that, and then I'm going to talk about something I even just saw yesterday, which kind of shows why it's hard to be able to determine. But go ahead and talk about the major arterials.
We also have the downtown area, the downtown core. That is swept every week. We have a dedicated truck that.
Well, of course, that's what people are saying.
Right. At night, that truck
That's a different
sweeps the
crew.
downtown. Then we also have, each night, we have a list of arterial streets that we sweep at night. And that's done, I think it's once a month we get through that list of those arterial streets. Beyond that, during the day is when our street sweepers are operating, going through the residential and collector residential type streets, the ones that aren't on our identified arterial list.
How many sweepers do we have?
12, but I believe it's 10 operating now.
So I think I'm just going to take it upon myself to do some research on how other cities do this, because what you're telling me makes no sense to me with that many vehicles. You ought to be able to have a schedule. But I get in my mind you should be able to have a schedule. I don't fully comprehend the picture, and I know you're dealing with it every day, but I'm saying I can't answer these people's question. And this woman, basically everything you're saying, she see it. And I said, a lot of that doesn't make any sense, because I thought we had plenty of street sweepers. But like I said, I'm going to do my own research.
And I think part of it may depend on what are we talking when we say schedule. Are you wanting to know an exact day and time of when we're going to be at a location?
Okay, let me say, let's break it down like this. We got 7 wards. And all of those are in, well, mine ain't no square. It's go way out and juts on all that. But just say if you were in Ward 6, how often, when is that truck gonna hit those interior streets? See, some of my streets are not finished, so some of them I know you're not coming on. Okay, I got a lot of substandard streets with no curb and gutter. Why you gonna be in the ditch with that big truck?
Sure.
Okay, I got a lot of ditches. So, but it's you, Public Works. You know the streets that have curb, gutter, and sidewalk. Those are the ones that need the street sweeping.
But once again, I might sweep that street today, and it takes me a day to do it. The next time I come to sweep that street, it may have a lot of debris on it. It might take me 2 days.
But that still don't make any sense. Just have a schedule.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, let's let Director Wright, if you want to go do some research, we'll be
I'm
happy
gonna
to
do
look
some
at it.
research on my own.
The
I
mayor,
just don't
the
get
manager
this.
will be happy to look at it too. And
I'm gonna do it.
well, all right, Director Hendricks, you're next, please.
I wanted to talk about the pictures that I showed that Director Adcock had shared with the trash. And these, I hope they're still waiting, it's 5 o'clock. But I did get an email from them, and the owners of the property that was shown at the last meeting of trash that was just all over the place, they were telling me that they were told by 311, Bruce, to put this stuff out there. So it's really a mess. But I'm just hoping that one day, out of the many years that I've talked about, these people who live in these houses, and particularly landlords, that's where your problem is a lot. It's landlords that's putting this stuff out, and we need to do an ordinance where you got to pay to go to the dump. I just can't hear this picking up toilet seats and refrigerators. Why? Why do we do that? So you don't, just our laws need to be changed. So that's a job for Tom, and I think he's already working on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much. We're finished. Oh, Director, what? Who?